Hi everyone. I want to speak today about EBSB and our accreditation process. It's just going to take a few minutes of your time. The California Association for Independent Schools is a nonprofit organization which any independent school in the state can apply for membership in. In order to be a member of this organization, your school must be accredited by them. Their process is very similar actually to WASC. Some of you may be familiar with that, an organization that accredits more colleges, high schools. CAIS does more middle schools and elementary schools. The accreditation is really, it's two pieces. First, the self-study, which is about a 100-page document that we write from questions CAIS provides us in advance. There are questions related to our finances, to our site, to program, everything from really big pieces, strategic pieces, all the way down to our day-to-day programming and our work with the kids. The second piece, though, is the site visit, which for us will happen January 22nd to 25th right here on our campus. 4 people, all from accredited CAIS schools, teachers, administrators, heads of schools, who will have read our self-study document, will come to our school for 4 days to see whether the story we told in that document is truth in our reality of day-to-day. They look at seemingly little things like how we lock up our first aid medications to as big as whether our annual budgeting process is working for our financial solvency. Both of these pieces have been led by Nathan and our accreditation committee, a group made up of students, current and alum, parents, current and alum, board members, and staff. This group does not really write the self-study. They're not the ones responsible for that. That was really written by many people in all parts of our school's workings. But instead, they really are shepherding us through the two pieces of the process. Now I'm going to go into a little bit about why we're doing accreditation. The board of directors and I decided early on in the school that we would apply for accreditation when we were old enough. The school has to be at least 3 years old to apply for provisional membership, which we received a few years ago, and has to be a provisional member for 3 years before we can apply for full accreditation. Why did we decide to go through the accreditation process? Well, there are a few reasons. 1, we get the benefits of being a CAIS school. We get collective data on independent schools across the state to determine things like faculty salaries. We get professional development like conferences for everyone on our staff. We get the ability to post job descriptions, and we get a seat at the CAIS table. And I believe, like a Trojan horse, we're going to be a voice for change in independent schools. The second reason why we're doing accreditation is that it's kind of like a student-led conference. We get to really take a close look at ourselves. In doing this, we get to do a deep dive in explaining what we do and who we are. We get better at telling our story, including articulating our curriculum and work with a purpose toward a third-party audience. We get to have others come in and give us feedback on whether we are achieving our mission. And it gives our whole community really a chance to see our story up close. The third reason why we're doing accreditation is that we get to examine ourselves, we get third-party opinions on some big strategic questions. Things around finances, staffing, size of school, our site. And while we're not planning on any major changes, the accreditation process really makes us take a look at each of these things more closely and answer questions that will help us feel good about our current strategic direction. Lastly, also, accreditation has many benchmarks related to school finances, business systems of good practice, and we get to use this vast checklist that's provided in the self-study to make sure that the running of our business is up to snuff. A great small example of this is that in a business, you have to keep a file for each staff person. And in a school, that file needs to contain everything from TB test results, fingerprinting documents, etc., etc., etc. And there is a checkbox on the self-study that simply asks if we keep appropriate staff files. We get to say yes or no. Of course, we would say yes. And then the visiting team comes and pulls a sample faculty file or staff file to make sure that we are doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing with them. The one reason we're not doing accreditation is that we are not interested in going through accreditation as some sort of badge of honor, like that little tag that would show up at the bottom of our website saying an accredited CAIS school. While yes, becoming a member and becoming accredited shows that we have our house in order and that we are doing what we say we do, we are more interested in making sure that we have our stamp of approval from you, from our families and our students, from our faculty, from our board, from really anyone who comes into regular contact with our community. We're more invested in those people than we are in CAIS. The great thing about the CAIS process is that they do not want us to be anyone we are not. The biggest question that we're going to be facing is, are we being who we say we are being? In other words, is our mission coming to life in everything that we do? They will not make us change things about ourselves to fit their mold, but instead they will point out areas of inconsistency between something we say we are and something they see here during their visit. To prove this, for instance, CAS has gotten rid of a requirement they had for a really long time. Before you had to give standardized tests in order to be a CAIS school. And they decided to get rid of this requirement, in part because they felt it was not really their decision whether or not a school should be using standardized testing to prove their students' learning. Instead, they now ask questions. Here's an example. How did you collect data on student learning, and how do you use that data to inform teaching? After our visit, at some point next spring or summer, we're going to find out the results. They're going to list commendations, recommendations, and our status. The maximum accreditation that you can get is a 7-year term with some variances with midterm progress reports or midterm visits or maybe additional requirements along the way. We could also receive what's called a probationary status, which would require more immediate addressing of needs in order to be considered for accreditation, with check-ins in a year or two. While we would, of course, love to receive full accreditation, a 7-year term, we also know that this is our very first time going through this process and that we may need more work in order to achieve that. And really, that's great information to have in and of itself. A really clear list of things we need to improve on as a school from an independent third party. What I am sure about is that it won't change who we are, just help us to be the best version of ourselves, kind of like our student-led conferences. We need you in this process. Nathan will be sending you this week a rough draft of most sections of our self-study to read, digest, and give feedback on. Please do so. It is a rare opportunity for you to gain a deep understanding into EBSB. We also need you to give us feedback on anything that does not feel right or does not feel congruent in your day-to-day experience with the answers that we provided. And you can email that to accreditation@ebsfb.org. In doing so, you're going to help us to ensure that we are really telling a story that is congruent with who we are being. Thank you so much for helping out, and stay tuned for our CAIS visit in January.